Hello and welcome to day 12 of the Floral Craft Countdown, where I'm sharing 14 flower-themed Cricut paper craft projects in 14 days. Today's project, I have to say, is probably my least favourite out of the whole countdown because I am not a fan of fiddly paper crafts that need a glue gun, as I am notoriously bad with a glue gun. However, rolled flowers are huge in the Cricut world, so I definitely wanted to include some of those when I was putting together the projects for this countdown. Today's download includes 5 separate rolled flower templates, and you also get the template to make this shadow box too, which uses all of those flowers, and you've got some extra leaves and greenery too. It's a little bit hard to see because I've cut them in silver, so it's catching on the camera lights a little bit. There are so many different ways you can use these flowers, but they do look especially nice in shadow boxes. This one is my favourite of the 5 designs. It makes a lovely rose. And there's also a couple of others that kind of look rose-like too. You can also use them all in one as a shadow box background. So here is 25 flowers in 5 shades of purple, going from darkest to lightest. And then I haven't put the glass in this because it would catch on my camera lights, but you could then put a vinyl design onto the glass to add a phrase or a saying or a picture, and this would make a really, really lovely gift for someone. So let's crack on with today's project. I'll try not to burn my fingers with my glue gun, but first let's see where to get these rolled paper flower templates. The files for this project are free for the next 24 hours. Here's how to download them. Register a free ticket for the Floral Craft Countdown at craftwithsarah.com/floral. After registering, you'll get an email which contains a link to the schedule page for the countdown. Visit the schedule page to find and download today's files. Each download is only available for free for 24 hours after it goes live. If you have missed some, check out the Instant Access Bundle at craftwithsarah.com/floral bundle, which gives immediate and ongoing access to all of the files from the Floral Craft Countdown, plus loads of extra bonus designs. The download comes in a zip folder. You will need to unzip this before uploading the SVG files into Cricut Design Space. This is what the 5 rolled flower templates look like when they're loaded into Cricut Design Space. If you're not sure how to get to this step, check out the Foundation Learning section of the Floral Craft Countdown, where there's a link to a separate tutorial and video in there on how to upload SVG files into Cricut Design Space. Each rolled flower is a separate SVG file, so you will need to upload each one individually to get them all onto your project. They all load in at 6 inches wide, and that's the size that I'm going to cut them at to show you how to put them together. But I think for a better kind of impact when you're making them, to make them look more realistic, if they're a little bit smaller, they do tend to work a little bit better. So I would resize them to maybe around 5 inches wide if you're going to be putting them in a shadow box or something similar. But of course, it's completely up to you. You might want to play about with these to work out what is the best kind of cardstock for you to use with them. I found that a lightweight card seems to work best for me, and a solid card that is coloured all the way through. When you use heavier weight cardstock, it's more difficult to roll them up to create the floral effect, and the opposite kind of applies too. I tried some from just normal paper rather than cardstock, and because that was so thin, I found it didn't really hold its shape very well, so again, it just didn't look as good. So a lightweight cardstock, around 160 GSM. If we're in the UK, we measure our card in GSM. Around 160 GSM seems to work kind of well, up to around 220, but I wouldn't really go any heavier than that. If you're looking to fill a particular size shadow box with these flowers, keep watching this video because I'll show you how you can resize them to make sure they're perfectly going to fit into your frame, and you can have the exact amount you want in each row a little bit later on in this video. But for now, I'm going to cut these out from my cardstock and then show you how to put them together. You will need a glue gun to put these together, so get that on, get it heated up, get them cut out, and then let's get started on our flowers. Here are my 5 flowers all cut out, and I've done them in the same colour that they appear in Design Space when you load it in, just so it's easy to see which flowers create which patterns. I'm going to show you how to fold up each of these, and you'll need a glue gun to stick the final piece together. Now, I've already kind of started doing this one, which you can see because it's not flat, so I'll go with the orange one first. You want to take the end, which is the outside of the spiral, and then start the middle bit by rolling quite tightly just for that very middle of the flower. I've cut these from cardstock, so it's a little harder to get them to roll. If you've used paper, then it will be a little easier. But then I'm going to continue rolling this, and I'm not pulling it very tightly anymore. It's quite a loose roll, so that as I'm rolling, the card is coming apart a little bit. If you do it too tightly, your flower will end up sort of too thin and not looking right. So every now and then I'm sort of letting go a little bit like this, so it will open up, and then a gentle roll round. Try and keep your bottom level, so I'm getting a nice level spiral there. And then I'm still going, folding round, getting looser and looser as I go round. Still going, and then you end up with this little bit with the circle, and that's what will be glued to the bottom to hold the rest in place. So now I'm going to let go and let it unravel a little bit. And you can see now it's starting to look more like a flower if I hold it up. There we go. So now that that's in place, I can turn it upside down. Just gently fold that back, and then, oops, I just let it go a little bit too much. A bit of glue on the circular bit there. Be careful of your fingers because glue guns do get very hot. And then push that down so it covers the swirls. It won't quite hit all of them, but it will touch up against quite a lot of them. And then that glue will hold it in place. We can turn it round. And then to make it look a little bit more realistic, you can bend some of the petals outwards. Now I let that go a little bit too much because I was trying to make sure that you could see it. So it's a little bit looser than it should have been, but you see it's still making a very pretty little flower. Okay, let's try again on another one, this time the red. So once again, I'll start with the outer bit, and I've got a little bit of glue gun string holding that towards the orange one. So I'm going to start quite tight on that very first one, just rolling it up. See, I've got a little circle, and then roll along that spiral, and now I'm going to let it loosen up as it rolls. It's not a tight roll. Just let it go down there. Again, this is quite thick cardstock, which is probably not ideal. I'm holding mine a little bit tightly on this one, I think. Let's just let it loosen up. And then go back to rolling it round until I end up with the bottom bit. Glue gun on there, and then hold it over those petals And it will expand a little bit. Hold it until the glue dries. And then I'm going to bend some of these petals outwards to break that spiral a little bit and just make it look a little bit more realistic. And there is my second flower. So you can see how the difference makes them look different when they're done. Okay. Number 3. This card is very thick, so this is going to be difficult. The thinner the paper, I think it'll be easier, especially if you're making them smaller. This one gives you more of a tighter rose design. And then we'll go yellow. This one you can bend some of those petals out again. Open it up. And then gives you this kind of a spikier flower. And then we've got one left. And there's my fifth flower. That was hard to say. This one I probably left a little bit too tightly curled because the petals aren't quite coming apart as they should. So then here are my 5 that we've ended up with the 5 different templates. It might take a little while for you to get the hang of these. As you can see, I am still definitely learning because they're still not as neat as they could be. But I think because they're quite quick to cut, and you could practice with just general scraps of card or even white paper, printer paper, or white card, just something that you've got lots of or that's quite cheap. You can sort of practice and get the hang of them as you're going. And then once you have mastered folding these and getting them all stuck together, then you can move on to using them in your craft projects. I think that the orange one is my favourite, how this comes up, and actually I found this one of the easier ones to roll. That just looks lovely. Here are a couple of ideas of things that you can do with your rolled flowers once you've made them. Here is a shadow box frame containing lots of different ones of the flowers, all in different sizes and different colours, with some silver leaves in the background. The leaves all come in your download folder for today as well. And I've also included this design as its own standalone SVG with all of the pieces already sized so that you could make this exact design if you wanted to. You'll just need to make sure that you size it to fit in your frame. This one is about 9 inches wide. It's an old IKEA ribber frame. I don't think they make them like this anymore because I've had this in my cupboard in my craft room for a really long time. But that looks really nice with them all in there. You can see all the details if I hold it up. I spent a bit more time and care on those flowers, so they look neater than the ones that I just stuck together for you. Another thing you can do is to cut lots of the same flower in different shades of the same colour and end up with something like this. So this is the same flower cut 25 times, 5 in each colour, and then I've just placed it into this shadow box. There's a bit of purple card behind it all. You can't really see it because the flowers filled it really nicely. I've left the glass off of both of these shadow boxes just because otherwise they would capture the camera lights and you wouldn't be able to see in very well. But the glass does fit over here nicely without touching the roses. And then once you've done this, you could then perhaps cut a vinyl design from adhesive vinyl. White would look nice, or silver or gold, and put that on the glass. That way you could have a lovely kind of saying or something on the front of here, and then you've got all the flowers inside. To do something like this, you would need to work out the size of the flowers for your particular frame. Here's a very rough guide on the screen now about the size that the flowers will come out if you cut them out exactly as the size that they load in on when you load the SVGs into Cricut Design Space. So you can see all of those on the screen now, and I've just named them the colour that the SVG loads in on. And then how I worked this out for my frame, I don't know if this is actually a foolproof method, but it did work out fine for me, is what I did was I had my frame already, and then I measured the inside of it. Normally when I measure shadow boxes, I measure all the way to the edge because I know that my cardstock layers are going to sit on the side, but this one, the roses have to fit exactly in the middle. So I measured my gap instead, which was 8.5 inches. And then on the computer, I worked out the size to make each flower so that I could have 5 in a row. Here's how I worked out the size to put my flowers. Now, I will say I'm not very good at maths, so I tend to overcomplicate everything when I'm trying to work something out. There is probably a way simpler way to do this, but this is the way that I thought in my head kind of made sense, and it worked. So I'm going to go with it. But if you know of a simpler way to calculate the sizes, please do let me know in the comments. Okay, so what I did was I first Googled calculator just to get this up. You could also use the calculator app on your phone or even a real calculator if you have one. I wanted to find out the size of the finished flowers so that I could put 5 in a row in my shadow box. My shadow box is 8.5 inches, that's the available space inside the frame. And then go divided by 5, and that gives me 1.7. So my finished flowers should be 1.7 inches when they're made. That means I can get 5 in a row and it will fit beautifully. So how do I work out the size the SVG needs to be in Design Space to give me flowers that end up at 1.7 inches? For that, I used percentagecalculator.net. So first, let's work out the original size of the flowers, which was 6 inches. That's the size, the width that the SVG loads in by default. And that gives me a flower of 2.2 inches, which I know because that was on the graphic that I showed you just a little while ago. So 6 is what percent of 2.2? Press calculate, and it's 272.72%. Now you can go into the top box and we can say what is 272.72% of, and here you type in the width of the flower you want to make. So I'm going to go 1.7. Calculate that, and then that gives you a really, really long number probably. So I would simplify it to just the first bit and then 1 decimal point, so 4.6. So for me, to make 1.7 inch flowers, I need to make the SVG 4.6 inches in Design Space. This is the flower I'm using. It's the second one, the second design. You see it's 6 at the moment. I need to change that to my new number. So 4.6 inches. Make sure the padlock icon above the width and the height is closed. Press enter on the keyboard and that changes in proportion. So now I've got 4.6 inches. I can duplicate this to make 5. And I think I might just cut these out from printed paper first, just to make sure they'll fit. But if you're confident, you can just go ahead and cut them out from your coloured cardstock. Another way you can do it so that you don't have to keep duplicating is you could make your one for every colour. I'm doing 5 different purples in my shadow box, but I'm just going to make them all 5 completely different colours just to show you this part. What you can do instead of making 25 on the screen here is make one for each of your different colours that you want, then press make, and then on this screen change the project copies at the top to 5 and press apply. And then that changes the screen so that it's now going to cut 5 in each colour. So that's a little bit of a quicker way to get the right amount. And you could move these about and probably get them all on one sheet of 12 by 12. Yeah, look, that'll fit beautifully. So you don't need to use 2 sheets if you're doing them at about this size. You can fit them all on one. So I hope that kind of helped to see the size to make the flowers. But as I said, I do tend to overcomplicate anything when it comes to working out maths. So it worked for me. Hopefully it'll work for you. But if you are not sure, then you can just do a test one. You could even just test cut one flower and then stick it together and measure it and see if you end up with near enough that number, so my 1.7 inches. Remember though, you can overlap them when you're lying them together in the shadow box frame. The bottom petals do actually look nice when you kind of overlap them a little bit with the next one. So if it's a little bit bigger than you need, I would say that's fine. They should still fit. You can squish them in. But if they're too small, that's at the point where you probably want to just make them a little bit bigger and cut them again. Because if you make them too small, there'll be gaps between each flower and it just won't quite fill the space as well. It'll look a little bit gappy and a little bit bare. So a little bit bigger, fine. A little bit too small, maybe not so fine. But of course it completely depends on the look that you're going for in your shadow box. I hope that you enjoyed this video on how to make rolled paper flowers and also the couple of ideas of how you might use them in your craft projects. If you did enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and come back tomorrow for day 13 of the Floral Craft Countdown. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!